Without further ado, I'll introduce Robert Rollins, who I've known since he started in his business. And he's a follower of that edict that you take care of your equipment. And you can tell him about your business and whatever.
Okay. All right. Well, I recognize a lot of my friends and associates here, so I'll give you the short version because my resume is about 3 pages long. You don't want to hear all that. But started Greenhaven about 30 years ago. It's actually our 30-year anniversary this year. So Greenhaven 30 years ago. And we started out doing horticulture and tree care, horticulture and arboriculture, and then we decided to let's just specialize in arboriculture. But as you all know, whether you're in turf, horticulture, nursery production, or arboriculture, you gotta have sharp tools. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for 3 people, and I didn't have 3 parents. But one of them was my mother. She was a teacher, and she instilled in us how important education is. And so I strongly believe in sharing what knowledge I have with others. If you're receptive to that, then we've got a good thing going. Paul Cappiello, the executive director here at Yew Dell Gardens, years ago asked me if I'd give a talk on sharpening tools. I said, sure, you know me, I'll talk about anything. He said, well, I think it's really important. A lot of gardeners come out here. They want to know about sharpening their stuff. I said, okay, I'll do it. And then Dr. McNeil and Betsy Taylor asked me if I'd speak at today's summer outing. And so, here we are. So thank you for inviting me, and I'll do my best to help everybody learn a little bit more about the hows and whys of this. Sharp advice for the green industry, okay? Let's start with the history of sharpening tools, okay? Yes, the Germans, as Will mentioned, have been sharpening tools for ages, but they weren't the first. The first people to sharpen tools were the cavemen, okay? And they even knew that a sharp spear would put more food in the cave, okay? So they knew they could be productive, okay, if they had sharp tools. So if the cavemen knew that, then we all should understand that and, try to do that too, okay? So if you sharpen tools and keep them sharp, they're going to last longer and they're going to be more efficient. So company owners, employers, they don't like spending money on overtime for people to sharpen tools, but the bottom line is they get their money back in production, okay, and efficiency, and the plants do better. They're not as stressed or traumatized when bad cuts are made, or tears, or rips, or rough cuts. Okay, so if you go to get some surgery, I hope that the prep nurse gives the surgeon the sharp scalpel to make those cuts on you, because you're going to come out of it a whole lot better. Okay, and there's less stress on the tool and less stress on you or your workers as you struggle and push and try to get through what you're trying to cut. And let's face it, we're in a cutting industry because we're in a growing industry. Okay, so if things grow, they got to be cut, right? And you got to prune them. Okay, and so you get your money back if you prune good. You do good. So plants are less traumatized and heal or compartmentalize or callus over better if you prune with sharp tools. Okay. They also, you want to remember that sharper tools are safer tools. Now, a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that. They're going to say, no, Robert, a sharp tool is going to cut a guy open. What about the nurseryman that sharpened his spade so sharp that he cut his toe off? Okay, that's a true story. Okay, it happened to the guy that replaced me where I used to work. I left there and they hired this guy. Well, he got the spade sharp, but he cut his toe off with it. So you might say, well, sharp tool is more dangerous, but it's not. It's not really, because when you have a dull tool, you tend to try to work it harder than you have to, and that's how you get cut. So even with like chainsaws, a dull saw, you're pushing it through and letting it cut itself, you could get cut. Okay, you could get hurt. So you still have to abide by all the safety techniques and rules and regulations. Now I know a gentleman, and he's 82 now, and he had a dull pair of loppers. And I called him before I came today to make sure he was okay with me telling this story. Okay? And he wasn't 82 at the time. He was a lot younger. He was 75, I think. And he was out in his backyard up in Maryland and near D.C. And he had his loppers. And he went to cut a branch, and he was pulling, and boom! And he broke his ribs. He broke 3 ribs. Okay? And I asked him, I said, Jim, I said, let me ask you a question. When was the last time you sharpened your loppers? And you all know the answer. Never. Never. So he had to put excessive force on that, and instead of the lopper breaking, the rib broke, the rib. So we don't want that to happen. So I told you a little bit about the history of sharpening tools, and the caveman story came up. And when I started sharpening tools way back in 1980, early 80s, I was taught by a guy named Daniel Fisher, a landscape contractor, and he had a nice business going, and I think Fisher is German, as a matter of fact. And so he believed in keeping stuff sharp. And so we would sharpen our spades and shovels. And if he saw another contractor with dirty shovels and dull spades, he'd say, look at those guys. We're better than them. And I said, how are we better than them? He said, because our shovels and our spades are clean and sharp. I said, okay, whatever. Now, I forgot my piece of burlap. Left it out there. But that's okay. Usually take a piece of burlap, clean off the spade or the shovel, and then I pay attention to the angle that the manufacturer put on a given piece of equipment. Okay? And here's a little little bevel tool that carpenters use. Okay? The reason I brought it is just to demonstrate that an axe, it might have, an angle like this, where a spade's going to have an angle like this, and a razor blade's going to have an angle like this. So pay attention to the angle that the manufacturer put on, or didn't put on. Have you ever bought a shovel and it had no sharp edge on it? You have to create that. So, keep that in mind. You don't want too steep, too sharp of an edge, because that's going to make it weak. First time you hit a little piece of gravel or something, it's going to break it. Okay? But if it's too blunt of a sharp edge, it's not going to cut or perform like you want it to. Okay? So the angle is important. And then you take this file and you don't sharpen into the tool and cut your knuckles like I did the first couple of times I did. But instead you place your hands parallel to the edge. Few people know this, but when you lay a file onto here, the lines of the file in here are the opposite on the other side of the file. So it's really taking a nice bite off of it. Okay, so just a few strokes like that, light pressure, and you can use the whole file, but if you stay parallel with the edge, you're never going to cut your hand. Now I bought this handy dandy little vise at Lowe's this morning for this talk, so it's brand new, but it works pretty good. And you can turn it over and lock it in, and you can ask your boss to get you one, and they'll say no, it's not in the budget. ask your spouse for it for Christmas or something. Just try to get one. And look at how we've got the sunlight coming in here. This seems to always work for me on these talks. The sun just shines right into me like a spotlight. Unbelievable. There's your edge. And then you hit that on the back side a couple times just to knock that off. Okay? And look at an edge of a tool sometime with a hand lens, okay, or a magnifying glass, or your reading glasses. I wouldn't get an electron microscope out to look at it, but take a look at it and you'll see, how sharp it is. And what you're trying to do is to get back to where it's straight and there's no reflection of light on the cutting edge, okay? So if you file off all the roughness on one side and all the roughness on the other, it will come to a point that will not reflect light. And that's how you'll know when you have it. So don't ever sharpen a tool on a cloudy day. No, you're a lie. Okay, so here's sharp. Okay, I had a lady who wanted to come to one of my talks. She wanted me to give a talk. And I said, okay, I'll give a talk on that subject, and I'll do a real nice PowerPoint. And she said, oh, please, not another PowerPoint. So if you like PowerPoints, I guess you're at the wrong talk. Maybe next time. So that's why we're doing it this way. Okay, so this is exaggerated. Okay, but here we have the blunt edge, here we have the sharp edge. But what I want you to take away from this is that light will reflect off a blunt edge, where light won't reflect off the tip of a sharp edge. Now, it'll reflect off the sides, sure, but I'm talking about the leading edge. And that's when you know when to stop. You've done enough. Now, with that said, if you sharpen your tools, often it's not hard. Right? Like so many other things in life. Okay? You just, accept it, do it, then it's not hard. Okay? And the old-fashioned way, I showed you the file, and I've got a wire brush, and you clean it off with the wire brush, and then you hit it with the file. Now, the new way, everybody likes gadgets, especially men. Men like gadgets more than women. We all know that. Okay, I'm not Tim Taylor, but I like gadgets too. Tool time, Tim. But here's a little quick way to clean your spade off. Makes it fun, makes it easy. Again, good luck getting your employer to buy one of those. And then here's a cordless grinder. Okay, and Lee, you might want to put your safety glasses on. Okay? But this can take an edge off. Okay? And you can use a bench grinder and take it across there. But the idea is to take a little bit at a time. Don't sit there and hog on it. And also get that angle, get that right edge. And after the grinder hits it the first time, you'll see that like that time it's hitting more on the heel of my edge and less on what I call the toe of my edge. Okay? So I'm paying attention to that. And then once you hit it with the grinder, some of the new tools are diamond edge sharpeners. Okay? And they come with a coarse side. Okay? Come with a coarse side. And then you flip it over and you got a fine side. Okay? So some new stuff for sharpening, makes it easier. I've brought some hand pruners here. We tried to get Paul Capiello's hand pruners because we were going to sharpen them, but he hides them. He hid them from us. We can't find them. But the new little cordless Dremel tool, you can take it and you want to put this stuff in a vise and then, go across there. Look at that. How easy is that, right? Okay. I'm old, I'm 56 now, and I'm used to doing it with these jeweler files. Now everybody knows jewelry is expensive, right? Well, jeweler's files aren't. This is like $4 at Lowe's, okay? So it's cheap to do it. Now there's also some other technology. Here's a tool that you can use to sharpen a pair of hand pruners. And again, you know, this is easier if I put it in the vise, but you pass through a couple of times, and then you'll keep it nice and sharp. Okay?
What is that thing?
It's a little sharpener. I'll pass some of these around. Just pass these around, and you can look at all these.
Oh, okay.
Keep them moving around the room. Here you go.
So the other.
It's not every day. On rain days or we got a guy simply that does
So-
tools that go reach truck, look at the printer head, the hand surgery, the loppers.
All right, so here's a plant that I pruned with a pair of the dull loppers. You can see it's torn, it's jagged. It just did not make a good cut. Okay, so once you sharpen, this is cut with dull tool. You see that, you know you gotta sharpen things up. Okay, is everybody still awake? Because I've got prizes. Okay, we're gonna have a little test. You didn't know that, did you? We're gonna have a test. Okay? There's no paper, there's no pens, it's not electronic, we're not going online. It's gonna be a verbal test. First person to raise their hand wins a prize, if they have the right answers. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so the next thing is, which, you know, some of you don't really care about, but a lot of you do, is chainsaw sharpening. Now, I told you about Dan Fisher. He taught me how to sharpen hand tools, and I thank him for that. But there was another guy that I bought chainsaws from named Tom Buhner. And Tom Buhner, he owned Buhner Equipment and Abrasives. And he was the guy that taught me how to sharpen a chainsaw. Okay? And he had some really, really good advice. Okay? And a chainsaw, the chain, is a bunch of wood chisels with the handles cut off. And they're welded onto a chain, and they roll around a sprocket driven by a motor. Okay? So each wood chisel takes a chunk of wood out just like a woodworker would. Okay? Now a woodworker, he taps the handle, and then he lowers it and he chunks off a piece of wood. Well, a chainsaw does it automatically by the way it's designed. It goes through the wood, chips off a piece, kicks it out. Okay? And the chainsaw has to be sharp, and the angle of the tooth on top has to be at the right angle, and the depth gauge, which is a piece of metal in front of the chainsaw tooth, has to be adjusted or filed down to create the correct thickness of the chip of wood that the chainsaw's throwing out. So when you sharpen a chainsaw, the first few times you can just use a round chainsaw file and you pass it through at the right angle. And these nice tools have marks on them to show the correct angle. You know, again, I said pay attention to the manufacturer's angle. Still chainsaws, which we get over here at Beard's Outdoor Power Equipment or the mower shop out in Preston, they still are good because they have little lines on them and little marks to help you kind of stay where you need to be. But this file passes through, taking out what material is needed until you get a real smooth, easy stroke where you don't have any resistance on there. Okay? So you push a little bit on it as you're filing, but you don't push real hard or you won't be able to tell the difference when it's sharpened. Once it's sharpened, there's not the material that made it dull hanging up in the file. The file is now cleared all that out and it's nice and smooth. Okay? And the file has to be held at the right angle. Okay? It has to be here. And then it also has to be at this angle. Okay? And then after you've filed it down and you check the depth gauge. Right here, you check these little pieces. It says, oh, that's too high in front of that tooth. Then you hit it with that file, flat file, and knock those down. And that's going to give you a high performance cutting chainsaw. And I had a gentleman tell me one time, I finished sharpening his saw, and he said, Robert, that cuts so good it cuts better than new. And I said, no. I said, I can't sharpen a chain better than new. And so I just thought he was full of you know what. But later, somebody told me, they said, well, did you knock the drags down? And I said, yes. And they said, what you probably did was you took the drags down lower, and so it took a bigger chip. And so therefore, he felt like it cut better than new. Okay? So now we're going to have a little question and answer session. And then if anybody gets any questions right, they're going to win a little prize. Is everybody still awake? Right there? Okay. All right, so any questions or comments about tool sharpening, problems you've run into?
How often should you sharpen the chain on the chainsaw?
How often should you sharpen the chain on the chainsaw? It depends on if you're cutting in the dirt, if you got a new guy on the crew and he pushes the chainsaw down in the dirt, you know, you're going to have to sharpen it every day, every hour, okay? But if you keep it out of the dirt and you're cutting with it, you could cut a cord of firewood, you know, 2 ribs before you probably need to sharpen it. And then that depends on what kind of wood you're cutting. If it's a softer wood or a harder wood, you know, if you're cutting Osage orange, some of you might know it as McClure Palmafera. How do you tell if it needs to be sharpened? That's a good question. Okay, number 1, smoke starts coming up. No, that can't happen. But no, you'll see sawdust instead of chips. Okay, so as your chips get smaller, you're not throwing out good chips. That's a good indicator. Okay, it's starting to get dull. You know, let's the performance. They can get hot. You know, they can smoke, but the performance starts to go down. And if the saw's off and you looked at it, and again the light was shining into the front of it, you would see a reflection on the cutting edge that would indicate, you know, I'm losing my cutting edge. It's starting to round over. And you know, some people take their thumb and they feel them. You know, I don't like to do that or teach people to do that. And you should sharpen with a pair of gloves on, a pair of safety glasses, because those little filings, the wind blows up and you've got metal filings in your eyes. But that's how you tell when it's time to sharpen. Okay, what else? How do you start it? It's got a little pull cord, right? No. All right, Mike, you were first, and then I'll take this gentleman's question.
Sure, it's in the methodologies for sharpening employees.
Sharpening employees? Well, this is sharp advice for the green industry, so yeah, I guess so. And you know, really, that brings up a good point. Not all men and women are created equal when it comes to certain tasks. We're all equal, you know, in our society, or supposed to be. But when it comes to certain tasks, we sort of assess folks. We try to figure out who is going to be good at this, and sometimes, and we also try to find who wants to do this. So some people want to do that job, and other people don't want to do it, but they're real good at it. And so you just have to, you know, make it work. Find the people that are good at it, entice them, tell them it's fun, and, you know, they'll sharpen real good all day long. Okay, yes, sir.
I've only ever sharpened all background chainsaws, but there's some devices now. I think Oregon makes one. It's like the shoe that goes over the front of the bar, the automated chain sharpeners. What's your opinion on those?
My opinion on the automated chain sharpening system that Oregon has out, you know, we don't even go there. I mean, that's really homeowner stuff. But there are chain grinders, okay? And it's a round disc. It's a pink round disc out on my table, and it goes on a little motor, and it comes down, and it grinds the chain, and then you can turn it perpendicular to the chain and put a wheel with a flat edge on it, and you can even drop it down and do your drags and your depth gauges, knock them down, okay? So you can use a machine, and they have abrasive wheels, and they even have diamond wheels, okay? But the rule of thumb is if it's getting hot and you're burning it, you're weakening that edge, and you're not going to get the results you want. You may get it sharp, but it won't last. It won't be a durable sharpening, okay? So, earlier Marilyn asked how long, does the chain go, or how often between sharpenings. That's another factor. It depends on who sharpened it, because if you don't do it right, it doesn't last as long. Okay? Yes, sir.
That oiler is very important on that, keeping that thing sharp.
Yeah, the oil works with the bar and the chain to keep the chain lubricated and working, and it will become dull quicker if you run out of bar oil or if it's clogged up. So, at our shop at Greenhaven Tree Care, it's 30 years old this year. It's our birthday, so say happy birthday to us. But if you come there any given day, there are employees cleaning chainsaws and sharpening chainsaws. It goes on and on, day in, day out. I've spent hundreds, thousands, I don't know, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of 30 years paying employees to sharpen and clean equipment and tools. Now you might say, I'm a fool, but I just think I really think it's important. And they were glad to get the hours. Okay? And so it's a win-win situation. And we do a lot on, Randy mentioned rainy days, we get in there and do a lot of catch-up work. Wintertime, we do a lot of catch-up work. Andy,
yeah,
you need your chainsaw cleaned and sharpened again, don't you? Yeah, you can drop it off.
Okay.
Sure.
Could you talk a little bit about materials that you may use to clean the tools with, like oil, when you're like rubbing cleaning the spade off before you would file it? You use oil on the burlap, you just brush the dirt off.
Well,
you use WD-40, not use anything like that, or any lubricants
okay.
on your loppers
Well,
or printers?
tools are like people. If you clean them, get cleaned up right away, it's not so hard. And so if it's real bad, yes, you might want to spray something on there, but we stay up on it so that it comes off pretty quick with a wire brush or a piece of burlap on hand tools, spades and shovels and the likes. And then sandpaper will get, plant goo off pruners, hand pruners, sandpaper's good. I don't use too many solvents because we feel like we keep it clean all the time. I know our friends at Limb Walker, they use Barbasol to sterilize some of their pruning tools. And do you all use that for cleaning as well, or do you know? No. And you all use anything for solvents for cleaning? Really, we don't, because I don't think, nobody really wants petroleum-based residue. And Fred Wishy, if anybody of you all remember Fred Wishy, he used to say get a 5-gallon bucket of sand, pour motor oil in it, and then you could clean your tools in it. And I always told people that's okay, but I prefer vegetable oil because it's organic, it's biodegradable. So, use that if that's what you're going to do. But we try to get them clean, as soon as we can, or the next rainy day, and it comes off pretty good. Now, I've got my little table set up outside. I'm going to take this little sawhorse back out there, and if anybody wants to, work and do it hands-on, please, come up and let me help you. If you want me to come to your shop and teach you, I'd be glad to. If you want to come over to our shop, I'll teach you and be glad to help out. Dave's tree surgeons. Dave, what's your question?
Rollins, any situation on a right-handed person or a left-handed person sharpening a right-handed chainsaw?
I've had trouble with a left-handed person using a right-handed chainsaw. I think he was like this when he cut his pants. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it was scary. And we were like, what's wrong with that picture? And then we realized the guy's left-handed. But I don't know how that comes into play on sharpening. You know, I just, you know, go to each side and move back and forth. And I never really have thought about that. But yeah, that's interesting. It might be a challenge to train that person.
But I
Tommy?
can teach you the difference between, what you do is do one side that's the most comfortable, take the saw, put it straight over, and put it right back in there, and then you just change your side.
Okay.
You come in that
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah, just flip it around in the
No.
vise. Or,
Turn it completely over.
oh, turn it upside down?
And then it turns and goes that direction.
I see. Okay. There you go. Thank you.
So if you're sharpening a chainsaw, how long does it take you to do the chain?
It doesn't take me very long on these small ones anymore, but you know, we have it's a Stihl 880. It's got a 4-foot bar on it. And if somebody gets that dull, you know, that takes a little while. It's got a 404 chain. The chains are different sizes, therefore they take different diameter files. So you want to make sure that your file is the correct size for your chain. Match it up correctly. But a saw like this, you know, I would have had this done, you know, while we were here talking easily. Randy, how long does it take you to sharpen a trim saw? 3 or 4 minutes. 3 or 4 minutes. So it doesn't take long. And he's staying up on his trim saw. This is his trim saw right here. And he stays up on it. So it doesn't take long. But if it's battered and beat and, you know, the new guy ran it into some concrete or something, and I hate to keep picking on the new guy, but the new guy that wasn't supervised, okay, by the foreman, okay, he gets it, you know, bent over real bad, then we usually put it on the chain grinder to get it and then finish it with a file. And a chain grinder is not going to give you as smooth of an edge on this tooth as a file will. So if you use a grinder and you finish with a file, that's really the best way to go. And there is a whole lot of technology and engineering that goes into these chainsaws and the chain itself. I mean, this is really the best steel money can buy on these chains, these teeth, the bars. That metal is special. And then it all works together to give you good performance. And we have about 30 Stihl chainsaws, 30 plus Stihl chainsaws in our arsenal. And each crew goes out with a 3-foot bar, a 2-foot bar, and 2 18-inch bar chainsaws, and then a couple of these trim saws. So they've got what they need. And then in their toolbox is our spare chains. Okay, so if they want to just swap out a chain, they can. And then in addition to that, we carry some files in the truck if they need to touch something up. So we're set up to get out there, get the work done, and not have, you know, too many problems. And I attribute that to keeping things sharp and, you know, maintaining things. You go out there to work, cut. You don't go out there to sit on your hands. Mike?
What do you all do when you run into something that's in a tree, like a fence or a pole or something?
He wants to know, what do we do when we run into a metal pole in a fence? Okay, I was working in Druid Hills, you know, flashback 20 years ago, 25 years ago, over at this guy, Sloan Graff's house. And, you know, he's a buddy of mine, so I give him a deal, right? Take down his maple tree. And it's a boundary tree. It's on the right side of his driveway over there at St. Matthew's, Druid Hills, on Brookfield. And I take the tree down, everything's going good, you know. Back then I was, you know, 20 pounds lighter, you know, I'm an 8 climber, I'm roping, I'm rigging, you know, I'm cutting and everything. And oh man, we get down, I'm feeling good, and I lay that chainsaw in there, make that stump cut, and bam! I'm like, whoa, what did I hit? And I pulled it out, and half the teeth are broken on the chain. I'm like, good gosh, what happened here? So we hit a post, a metal post in the center there, and you know, I did this deal for a buddy, but he wasn't going to pay me until, that stuff was out. I said, well, how do we, there's a metal post in here. He said, well, that's your problem. So, okay. This is the kind of friends I have. Okay? And that's not the only story about that kind of thing. But, so I took the chainsaw and first of all, we save our old chains. When we sharpen them down to a nub, which I expected somebody to say, how far down can you sharpen them? You can sharpen them down until there is no more to sharpen, and if you knock those drags down, it will still cut, okay? So we save them, we call them grub chains, okay? So I took some grub chains, they're sharp, sharp grub chains, and so I cut in there, and I kind of measured, with a piece of wire how far in the metal was, so I knew how far I could go. I went around the tree, and then, I nicked it a couple of times, went to 2 or 3 more, and I got all the way down there, and then I took and cut down like this with the chainsaw until there was just a post of wood, if you will, around that metal pipe, and then I knocked it off, and then I cut the steel pipe off, and finally the guy paid me. Okay? But I underbid that one.
What about those gas shears?
The gas shears. Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got some brochures out there on the gas shears that I got from Beard's Outdoor Power Equipment over here, who gave us one of the prizes, by the way. So if you need a chainsaw or something, when you leave here, drive out and go over there to Beard's and tell them Robert sent you. But anyway, there's nothing in that owner's manual about how to sharpen those head shears. Okay, so what we used to do is, we tried doing them with a flat file, and that works. You put them in the vise, and you go through like this, and you sharpen them like this, and then you go the other way. You can do it that way, and again, the sooner you do it and stay up on it, the easier it is. Now this is really too big of a file to do that. So this one for knocking down the drag, that works a lot better. A little flat file. And I guess you could use those little jeweler's files. Those weren't prizes, those things. I need my jewels back. But this little Dremel tool has an attachment that's longer and skinnier, and I'm thinking that might be good for hedge trimmers. Has anybody ever used that?
I use I just call it a little wizard. It hooks to an air compressor. Got a little disc on the end.
Okay.
And I most of the time I take the guard off of them.
Yeah.
You can't get in there.
Okay,
But
so it's
you
like
have
a Dremel tool with a little disc.
Yeah, you
Little
have
disc
to,
on.
but
Okay,
if you're
good.
not careful, you'll cut. If you don't get the blades in the right position, you'll dull the blade underneath. So you have
Right.
to kind of start it, stop it, and get it halfway in between.
Again, maybe send them off to have them sharpened. No, some things like hand saws. Don't try to sharpen hand saws. Go buy new ones. All right? But pole pruners, hand pruners, those can all be sharpened. Okay, any more questions, or you ready for the quiz? Okay. All right. Here's the first prize. It's from, again, a donation from Beard's Outdoor Power Equipment in Crestwood here, and it's a pair of safety glasses and some earmuffs, so when you're sharpening, you don't, lose your hearing and you don't lose your eyesight. Okay. So, all right. What group of Neanderthals first sharpened tools? Oh, caveman. Okay, he listed. There you go. Okay. Okay. All right. Give me 3 reasons, and this is each person. I'm going to let 3 people win 3 different prizes. Okay, or give me a reason why you should sharpen tools often. Why?
They cut better.
They cut better. Okay. All right. Pick one. What do you want? Okay. productivity. Okay. Who else will have their hands up first? I can tell. You did? Okay, wow.
It'll take you less time to sharpen your tools if you do it all.
Okay, there you go. Now, if you can't use this, trade it for a prize. Okay, you can use it.
use this.
All right, good. I love it. Okay. All right. Okay. Got a couple more tools here. Okay. All right. How about, let's see. What is a occupational disease that you could get from not sharpening your tools? Carpal tunnel syndrome is the right answer. Pick one. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, last question. Who has given you the best tool sharpening seminar you've ever heard?
Let's see. Mr. Ross himself. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
This video has been part of the University of Kentucky Nursery Crops web series. For more information on the topics discussed, please contact your county extension office.